people have heard of Stan Lee? Well, did you know that he grew up in the Great Depression and his family was really poor? How about Alexander Hamilton? If you don't know who he is, he was one of the founding fathers, the first Secretary of the Treasury in the United States, and invented the federal bank. But did you know he grew up on an island and his father left his family when he was a boy and his mother died when he was 6? Some people call this humble or humility, but I think there's a difference between starting humble lives and living humble lives. But there's a difference. But what makes the good people seem humble, or the humble people seem like the good people, and the proud people seem like the bad people? It all comes down to your definition of good and evil. So what's goodness? Goodness is the quality of being morally good or virtuous. So what's humility? Humility is a modest or low view of one's importance. But I think humility is knowing that you're worth every single thing that anyone's ever given you to lift you up or just make you feel better. But at the same time, knowing that you're amazing and that you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Also, humility is respecting people when you feel like you don't want to respect them. So, respect is also humility. So, if humility is treating people with respect, then what's pride? You see, it's okay to be proud of something that you did or something that you created, but it's bad when you get to that level when you're too proud. So what's pride? There's an old saying that says, pride comes before the fall, or pride comes before destruction, and haughty spirit before the fall. Proverbs 16:18. And what does haughty mean? To be arrogantly superior or disdainful. And what does disdainful mean? Showing a lack of contempt and disrespect, or a lack of respect. This is pride, as you can see, which is the opposite of humility, which is respecting people always. Like I said, not all pride is bad, but when you get to the point where you have a lack of respect for people, that's when you know it's out of hand. And like Matea said, I'm pretty sure you've leaned on someone. That can be bad, but it's okay to lean on someone when you know that you need to, and when things are too much for you. So I hope you walked away, you're going to walk away tonight, and you learned something and enjoyed my speech. Thank you. My name is Joel. Have a good night.
Our jobs are expected to be needed by the year 2037. There's also an anticipated need for 754,000 maintenance positions. There's also another expected need for 890,000 new cabin crew members. And if you can see these charts, it shows the expected need for all three of those groups around the world. As the threats of global security increase, the need for aviation security also increases. Unmanned aviation is increasing at a rapid rate. The need for trained professionals in that area is increasing as well. Daily flights increasing mean that there's increased need for educated and trained individuals in all fields of aviation. The world has been mobilizing very fast, and there's an increased need for highly skilled pilots and personnel because of that. It's important to understand that private travel is growing exceptionally faster than commercial travel. There is a pilot shortage. The demand for new pilots is far greater than the supply. This threatens the business aviation sector and the private aviation sector. There's a huge competition for a dwindling pool of qualified pilots. Higher standards pit private and business aviation against commercial airlines. This is a global crisis. It's not just a crisis in the United States. As you can see here, it's all around the world. Another reason for the pilot shortage is that approximately 50% of all pilots flying today are about to retire. If you can see this chart here, by 2029, 30,000 pilots will be retired. In order to attract more pilots, the airlines are offering very attractive pilot packages, which include high salaries and living expenses of the pilots being paid. This crisis has caused some planes to be grounded, which caused canceled flights and already created a disruption in European airports. Military recruitment by the airlines is another example of the pilot shortage. The airlines are offering sweet bonuses to lure pilots away from the military. But the biggest threat to aviation is time. We know this because of the initiatives to recruit more pilots and more women in the field of aviation. Time is a problem because AI-enabled automation is greater than a decade away. So we can't really be expecting to see self-flying planes without pilots soon. Another reason for time being a problem is because the retirement age for pilots is between 60 and 65 years old currently, and is being discussed as to whether or not this age should be increased. Lastly, the time factor poses a problem because of the flight hour requirement of 1,500 flight hours for pilots instead of 250 hours that was previously required for the airline transport pilot certification by the FAA. This was changed from 250 to 1,500 after a crash in 2015. My desire is to get you interested in the field of aviation. Think about exploring the vast opportunities that aviation has to offer. That's currently what I'm doing. I have close to 19 hours of flight command time in the air, and I fly a Cessna 172, like these planes right here. And I'm currently working on my private pilot license. My plan is to go into the U.S. Air Force as a commissioned officer, a second lieutenant. And you can do this too. You can get your private pilot license as long as you have flight instruction and time in the air. Thank you for your time. My name is Aiden again, and good night.
Good evening. My name is Philip Murray, and today I will be talking to you about the importance of having a club that you are a part of and cherish. Because clubs are where you meet new people and learn new things. And for me, I'm in two clubs, TED-Ed and 4-H. And in my 4-H club, it helps me with lots of things, like being more confident in front of others and having a business-type job. Because in my 4-H club, there are roles like vice president, president, and secretary. And for me, I'm the vice president of my 4-H club. I'm there for the secretary whenever needed. I sub in for the president. And also, in my 4-H club, I've got to go lots of different places and learn lots of new things. I even got to compete in speech competitions to bring home gold in advance. And the reason I'm telling you this is to give the ones who've never heard or done anything like this a point of view, a good one. For the people who've never done anything like 4-H, or Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, or anything like this. Because alone, we can do so little, but together, we can do so much. That's a quote from Helen Keller herself. Thank you for coming and listening to my speech.
Hello everyone, my name is Jahan. But before I start on my speech, can I ask you guys a few questions? Did you know that in education, North Carolina comes out as number 48 in the United States? And did you also know that private school costs up to $13,000 a year? And in states such as Texas and New York, a C counts as a failing grade, but in North Carolina you can pass the next grade with a D. As you can see, I'm talking about schools. In schools, we all need them to be successful in life. And we think about two different schools. We think of public and private. Because public schools, we think about fights and bad kids. In private school, we think as expensive. And there are some smart kids out there, and some of those kids don't come from nice backgrounds and can't afford the private schools. And scientists have recently discovered that a star can blow up and then go back to normal. So I want to use this as a metaphor. A star can be as one of those kids, and you don't let him. If you let him blow up, he's gone. But if you bring that child back and let him go to that private school, he can start off with a better future. Probably give his better kids one also. I'm saying that basically we can take out the public school and take out the private school and make all schools equal and give all the great education that we need. So, we don't expect aviation pilots to come in one day. Martin Luther King, he didn't expect racism to end in 1 week. We came here today to give you all these speeches about how we want our change. And I hope that this touched you guys. Good night.
Soraya. My name is Lelina. Today we are talking to you about Aviation Crisis and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life. We are first going to talk to you about Montgomery bus boycott, and then we'll talk to you about the March on Washington. One of Dr. King's first events was the Montgomery bus boycott. In the 1950s, there was segregation between black and white people. Black people weren't allowed to use the same things as white people, such as water fountains, restrooms, schools, and restaurants. For the buses, black people had to go to the back. Rosa Parks refused to move because she was sick and tired of being treated wrong. She was arrested and had a $10 fine. Dr. King wanted to stop segregation, so he made the boycott of not riding the bus until they had rights. He said, if we are wrong, the Supreme Court is wrong. The Constitution is wrong. God Almighty is wrong. Some of the white people were okay with this, so they firebombed his house and some churches. He decided not to listen to the white people and kept marching on. He wouldn't stop, and he had courage, and they didn't have segregation on the buses anymore. This helped Dr. King become a famous leader for ending segregation.
One of the most famous events for Dr. King was I Have a Dream speech. He had his speech on August 28, 1963, during the March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom. African Americans had the March for Jobs, Schools, and Freedom. They planned it around the 100-year anniversary of the Proclamation that freed the slaves. The people stood between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. The speech givers were standing on the stage on the Lincoln Memorial. Dr. King made a speech about blacks and whites and how they should be equal and to be kind to one another. They should be respectful too. This is one of the greatest speeches in history. The results was everything turned out good and things got much better around the United States. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a very good man and an amazing leader. Two events from his life were the Montgomery bus boycott and the I Have a Dream speech. He had empathy and fought for rights and made beautiful speech that changed the world. If it wasn't for Dr. King, the world would be different and it would not change at all.